Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and today I have two special guests, Angela Cox and Odell Mitchell. How are you guys?
Fine, well, thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm excited to have you guys here. Normally I have a one guest on a podcast, and I'm always intrigued when I have two different guests in a podcast, just because there's different elements and different points of view, and it's good to get, the more the better. So I'm excited to have you guys.
Thank you.
Well, we always say that diverse teams are better teams. So you've got a diverse team with you this morning.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So before we get going, let me just kind of give a quick introduction of who you guys are, and then we can dive in to it.
Wonderful.
So three kindness founders, Odell and Angela, connected in their time together as leadership development facilitators at a global airline through a shared understanding that keeping people safe is the number one way to ensure team success. Their safety first ethos, combined with a desire to understand individual wiring and its impact on organizations, gave rise to three kindnesses. A philosophy that focused on understanding people, extending grace, meeting people where they are, giving them permission to be themselves, and showing them how neurodiversity affects literally every facet of their lives. Their mission is to make the world a kinder place by giving people permission to be their authentic selves and to find or create the niche environments and inclusive cultures where they can thrive. Wow, that definitely it's amazing, and I'm always intrigued to see how people come together in a partnership or a union, and then initiate something that can impact the world, right? Having that said, before we get into all of that, why don't you guys tell me a little bit about your upbringing, and what was that like?
Sure. Angela, would you like to?
Sure. So I was raised in a blue collar home, working class. My father was a factory worker in a blue collar town, and learned a lot about work ethic and all kinds of really powerful, meaningful issues around work and loyalties and those kinds of things, and hard work. And so having moved from there into then my education is kind of the reason that I left my small town and worked my way into higher ed, and then eventually into corporate learning, where I spent about 15 years as a corporate learning consultant, a leadership development consultant, organizational effectiveness. And eventually that is where I met my business partner, Odell, as we were both leadership development facilitators for a major airline. And that was the genesis of three kindnesses that has come into being now. Odell.
Yeah, no, that's pretty awesome. And before we jump into that, like growing up, did you had any thoughts or ideas of what you wanted to be? You hear that idea of when I grow up, I want to be this kind of person, right? Or how was that for you in terms of that, right?
I always wanted to be a writer and a professor. So a writer and a teacher. Okay. Those were the big things for me. And I was told I would never make a living as a writer. So I went on and became a teacher of writing, became a composition instructor. Because I'm like, well, if I can't write, I'll help other people write. And then again, moving from my years as a professor, then I moved into the corporate learning. But I was always aware that I probably wouldn't succeed in a sort of standard 9-to-5 job. So I was very aware of that because of my own brain wiring, as we'll talk about in a little while, that I needed to find something that worked for me. And eventually I have arrived there, I think.
Okay, awesome. Odell?
Yeah, so for me, so if we're talking about like growing up, we're both Midwesterners. And so I had a very Midwestern upbringing as well, like kind of growing up in the St. Louis area. It's located in Chicago now, but grew up in a family that was pretty focused on creativity, but I didn't really fully understand that and like the wonderful gift that it was for my life until later on. So dad's a photographer, mom was focused on education and really creative education. My sister is a professional musician, so lots of creativity in the world, which was always about communication. How do we communicate with people and how do we do it in ways that are both standard and non-standard? So that sent me on paths where I was also, and still am, a visual artist growing up. And then that led me into spaces where, okay, I want to create these things, but I also want to know how to protect them and I want to know how to communicate them with others. So went to a path where I am also a practicing attorney. And so I have all of this communication experience, but then also that led me the various ways in which it was into, like Angela said, the space where I spent many years in organizations focusing on how do we help people be better. And a lot of that was about how do we develop folks? How do we help them understand their environments? How do we build skills in them that matter so that they can impact not just their work, but also the world? And that's where we met one another. Like I said, we were at a large airline, really enjoyed that. And then just was one of those where it's like this meeting of the minds and this meeting of values, like that was the genesis of Three Kindnesses for us. And so we left that behind us pretty fast to do some pretty great things beyond that. And so here we are.
Yeah, you know, it always fascinates me. I mean, just hearing you guys' background, both of you guys have a pretty good background, and it kind of leads to my next question. We're always thinking about that idea of I have a good 9-to-5 and I have a good job ethic and even just have something good behind my belt. And so the question that might come about is why leave something that is pretty secure and, you know, I have really good professions to kind of venture into something that might or might not work, right? What was the thought process for you guys to be able to say, you know what, I think, yeah, we've met, we've share ideas, and we think this is the way to go. Yet, again, leaving that behind, it's something I would say somewhat scary. So what was the thoughts behind that?
I think both of us, with our backgrounds and work ethic and some of the faith ethic that we grew up in, we have a strong belief that to whom much is given, much is required. And so the idea that we had something in our power to become voices for people who maybe don't have those voices yet was a really powerful driver, because both in our vocational journeys and the experience and the credentials, as Odell mentioned, he's a practicing attorney as well. So his work ethic has always been about keeping people safe. And so the idea that we could step out and be a voice and help others by using the skills and the numerous opportunities that we've had, it was almost a calling in a way for us to stop and go, okay, we could stay here in this moment and it would be fine. But we have always been driven to go, can we help people do better, feel better, be safer, see people? And ultimately, we just want people to be seen. And if we can do that through Three Kindnesses or through whatever opportunities that we've had, then we felt we felt impelled to do that.
Yes. And if I may, one thing I would say as well is the way we talk about it is that, yes, we did have at one point like secure jobs and these good things, but very much like Angela is saying is that the way that we look at safety is particularly key. And it was especially once we saw one another that like that didn't equate to the psychological and emotional safety that people need in order to be best at what they do. So just because we were in these spaces where we had some of these opportunities, we were also able to look around and go, yeah, but I also know that like my brain wiring, the way that I see the world, the things that I want to do, this is not the playground for that. And so even being able to see that in one another really also gave us the courage to go, so, okay, we'll step out and we'll do something adventurous so that we can provide safety for others, provide a mechanism for others to be able to see both how different they are and how exceptional they are and how not alone they are in that regard.
Oh, okay. No, that's definitely again of interest, just because being able to find. And so what I'm hearing is there was a bigger purpose and something even way bigger than what you guys were both practicing at that time. And again, just kind of realizing and knowing that if I work for this purpose, then something greater is going to come out of that, right? One of the things that I wanted you guys to kind of elaborate, one of the biggest obstacles that maybe collectively you guys have both overcome is being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world, right? So can you guys elaborate more on that?
And that's a big connection to the question that you just asked as well, because we definitely felt that, well, I won't speak for Odell, but for me, a lot of the jobs that I had, even though they were good jobs and I occasionally was even good at them, I also recognized that I didn't always fit. And so I was often looking for where I fit. And I think a piece of corporate culture is the idea of being passionate about your work, which is great, right? Because that's how we get things done. But what I began to notice a lot in corporate organizations and corporate cultures was passionate people also being sort of not treated well, because if you're passionate and you get work done, you're great. But if you're also passionate just because you're human and maybe life is rough and you're showing that level of passion, that's dismissed. And what began to emerge in my mind was the fact that you have so many neurodivergent people, and we're talking about people on the autism spectrum, we're talking about ADHD, any way in which your brain needs sort of assistance to get through the world, because it's a neurotypical world and you are not neurotypical. So anytime we would see things like that happening, that would really impact the way I thought this culture is losing things. Because what we're doing is we're looking at people who have special skills but don't fit a mold. And then we're trying to put those people with those skills into this mold, and then all of their lovely edges and quirks, all that is being sort of shaved off. And what do we lose when we don't allow people to be their best authentic selves? We lose innovation in companies, we lose creativity, we lose camaraderie, we lose compassion. There are all these things that are getting lost simply because somebody didn't recognize that you work differently than I do, therefore that's bad, which we should, be. So the idea of inclusivity was a huge part of what drove us. And the idea that, we're all different and your wiring is always going to impact everything about your behavior, the way you move through the world. And so that inclusivity is kind of something that we started to drive toward, because we recognize that that's an obstacle for many people, both in understanding themselves and then in other people understanding and reacting to them. And so we really wanted to give voice to that.
Yeah, awesome. Adele, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, Angela says it so well and like grabs the heart of what is truly important to us. And I think one of the pieces that comes from that is that we really want to give people permission. We want them to be able to have permission to be themselves, first of all, to see themselves for who they are, and then permission to be that. And we know that the neurotypical world isn't set up in that way. It's a lowest common denominator. And so to be able to do that is particularly challenging. I always view myself as one of the first case studies for the work that we were doing, because that's one of the things that has resonated most deeply with me. I am a strong introvert, contrary to what many people might think or experience or their perceptions of the world, very strong introvert. And then also I'm a highly sensitive person. And both of those are about brain wiring, which we talk about heavily in our work to help people be seen. And for me, one of the places that really shows up is my pace. The way that I move through the world, the way that I move through my work is very methodical, very thorough, very exceptional in that way. But that was not always rewarded. It was constantly being pulled along, going, you have to move faster, you have to take these risks, you have to do these things. And just like she said, how a lot of times passionate people, we talk about, we want passionate people in the workplace, but then we don't necessarily reward that. It was a similar thing for me. A lot of the things that I would bring to the table were the things that people, bosses, et cetera, would go, this is really great. But then whenever the time came to really honor that, that wasn't quite there. And
but then tone it down, right?
Yeah. Turn it up because we need it, but then tone it down. Why are you slowing me down, et cetera? And so those pieces were challenging. And for me, it wasn't until I had the permission to see myself and see those as strengths that I was really able to step in them. I was constantly trying to fix those things because that's what the world around me told me that I need to do, rather than enhance them. And now I enhance them, and it really has shifted the way that everything is. Like the reason that people come to me for the things that they do, the reason that people resonate with us the way that they do is because we've given ourselves the permission, and we really want to be able to take that out to other people. That's what we do. At the heart of what we do is really help people be seen for who they want to be and for what they bring.
Yeah, and that's actually a pretty good point. And oftentimes we as people, right? We don't take action, or we don't act in certain things, whether it's in our families or in our workplace, because we feel like we don't have the right type of permission for us to be able to do that, to be able to take whatever idea or thing we want to do out into the world. And it's just kind of like the idea of if you want to become a writer, right? And sometimes you feel like you need to have all the different elements, and you have to have the permission to know how to write, or how to work with a editor, or whether or not people are going to buy your book, or there's so many different things. And it's like we're constantly looking for this exterior validation where
Right.
I mean, it's good to get some sort of feedback. You don't need that permission or that. You got to be able to give yourself the permission to say, you know what, I'm going to put out something, whether or not it's good for the world. As long as it's good for me, I'm going to put it out, right? And so that's pretty interesting that you guys mentioned that. Talking about three kindnesses, give me the overall aspect of what exactly is it? How do you get involved with people or organizations to help them out in their stuff?
The three kindnesses are based on safety, empathy, and diversity. And so we move into organizations that are sometimes in crisis, sometimes they are team building, sometimes they're experiencing high turnover. As Odell always says, show me a team in crisis and I will show you someone who doesn't feel safe. And so we start with psychological safety, because until we have that psychological safety place in peace, we cannot engage around conflict. We cannot increase creativity and innovation. So we start with safety. We encourage people to cultivate empathy, and that is very much about what we were just talking about, understanding each other's wiring, understanding that introverts and extroverts look at the world differently, understanding that people who have neurotypical brains, often their behavior is incentivized and a neurodivergent person's behavior is disincentivized. So understanding that from a very empathetic perspective then can move us into honoring all that diversity on a team. And so we work with any kind of organization that just needs more kindness. And we're talking like what we started as, which was deliberate kindness. We love random acts of kindness. I mean, scatter that like glitter all over the world. It's wonderful. But deliberate kindness is when we stop for a moment and we truly engage with someone and say, but what is it that you truly need in this moment? What is your wiring, sort of asking of this moment? And that way we can be much more deliberately and inclusively kind. And that way that even though we have the best intentions in the world, sometimes our impact gets in the way. And so recognizing that when we stop and behave in an inclusive way, especially on teams, because if you have a team that is very diverse and you give them psychological safety, that's going to help every aspect of your organization. Every measurable function of HR is improved through kindness. And that's what we try to bring to organizations. Odell, what did I miss?
You certainly didn't miss anything. I would say if there's anybody who's listening, people that should resonate with and go, it's people who have influence over others. That's one of the places where we see that. So if you run a team, you have influence over folks. If you run an organization, you're high in leadership and you say, I want the thumbprint of my organization to be one that is kind and also productive, the kind of place that people want to be, so that when they come, they do their best work and we also succeed, we also productive, then that's the kind of person who goes, I think I need this filtered in throughout. Or even if you are a senior leader, you're going, I know the way that I move through the world, I need something individual for myself. And I know I need that some programming to shift my life so that everything that I touch has a different footprint or is enhancing the footprint that I want to leave out there. That as well. So all of those people tend to be the people that we connect with best, because as you can see, it is connected to how do you connect to other people. So anybody who has leadership or influence over others, those are the people for whom the benefits of three kindnesses are wide ranging in that regard.
Yeah, and is this normally what is the time frame on your programs, or there are different time frames depending on assessing the situation with those companies or leaders?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a lawyer answer from front. It's like, it depends, but it does in the sense that we tailor things pretty well. the things that we're talking about are the kinds of things that are not best done as a one and done. So we absolutely like to go into organizations, talk to people, really introduce them to the concepts. But the best folks that we've worked with are working at this for at least a quarter or two.
Okay.
Sometimes even more. So we can sit down and do full understanding of what is the situation that you're in, what is the outcome that you're trying to do, what is the full needs analysis, what are the KPIs you're trying to hit in that regard, and then how do we roll that out to the various people that you're going to impact. And when we've seen that, we're spending a heavy amount of time on all three of the kindnesses. And again, we can do that in a 90-minute webinar, but it's much better done when it takes up a good chunk of your year if you want it to be lasting, and we want it to be lasting. So when people truly embed it in their lives or their organizations, that's where we see things. Did I miss anything, Angela?
You did not miss a thing. I would only add that if conventional diversity and inclusion programs were working, we would all be working ourselves out of jobs by now. But we're still struggling. We're still struggling to understand true diversity and inclusion within organizations. And so there's sort of no time limit. It's just how deeply can we begin to embed ideas of situational empathy, ideas of just what it means to be human, and to begin to honor that. If we all started recognizing each other as deeply valuable human beings, then again, Odell and I would be out of a job, because everybody would just be loving and caring and extending grace. But, really important things in life take time. So we are absolutely willing to kickstart your kindness journey with a 90-minute webinar, but we are also willing to be, in for the long haul until you really embed that inclusivity and that safety and ultimately belonging into your organizations.
Right. And this is not tailored to any specific industry, right? It's really open to any business or any influencer from that perspective.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's tailored specifically to any industry that has people in it.
Right.
So there you go.
Almost about 99.999% of the business. No, that's good. One of the things that we've been talking about kindness a lot, and one of the things that you guys have here, which is kind of interesting, is kindness isn't weaknesses. It's about being a doorman. Kindness is about seeking small truth every day that help us understand each other better. And it's about owning and celebrating our own truth of who we are and how we need to move through this world to be the best people we can be. Right. And again, I love that. And kind of going back to the idea of, having grace, being kind, helping people kind of tap into their wiring and
Yes.
having them see things from a different perspective. Right. So talk about it for 1 second. A lot of times we see things from one lens. And sometimes we got to be able to shift things around, whether it's in our business or personal life. And we got to be able to put a different kind of lens or have a different perspective, a different view of what is in front of us to be able to get the best outcome or get the truth and be able to move forward to the next level, right?
Right.
How have you guys seen that in the world, even in the things that you guys have done or in your personal life that, when you ended up taking that and changing the framing of that, gave you an upper hand?
One of our life rules that we live by is we surrender ourselves to the strengths of others. And I think it becomes really important as you're moving into any kind of team. And it doesn't have to be just corporate minded. This can be how you interact with your family, with your partner or significant other. This is anyone that you have a working kind of relationship with, is recognizing that they will be able to do things that you can't do and that's okay. So much of what our world is focused on right now is like, I need to be significant. I need to be seen. I need to be out there. But we also forget the power of, which is one reason why I love the partnership that I have with Odell, is because there are things that he does way better than I do, and I am happy to let him do it. So, but we had this genesis moment many years ago talking to a colleague, and we're having a conversation about introversion and extroversion. And she had gone and visited she'd gone out to grab some lunch. She'd come back. We're like, you were gone a while. We thought you were just grabbing lunch. And she's like, no, I saw so-and-so. And I sat down with them and we talked for 30 minutes. And she was so excited. And she was just, you could tell she was just bolstered and excited to have had that interaction. And we said, well, what if that person wanted to be sitting alone eating lunch to recharge? And she was really taken aback by that. And it shifted her lens immediately to understand that, oh, that was me being kind. I mean, her intentions were beautiful, right? And that was her being kind. And that was her moving through the world with her lens that I wouldn't want to sit alone. So I'm going to go sit with this person and keep them company. And we sort of shifted her lens in that moment to go, but sometimes if you're an introvert and you only get 30 minutes in the middle of your day to be alone, that is precious time to recharge. And so that was such a powerful moment for us to go, not all kindness acts of kindness are created equal, right? And I love the idea that you're talking about here of shifting my lens to go, even though I would prefer to be working a certain way on this team right now, I also have to flex into the strengths of others because my strength in this moment is not what's needed.
Yeah, wow, I love that. I love that. Adele, anything you want to add to that?
Absolutely. So I love that story about that coworker. It's so true. And one of the things that I think about is especially for me, when we're talking about how do you shift that lens, well, one of the things that it's particularly nuanced, but particularly powerful is we always talk about the best things that I bring, the things that people want from us come from this place of kindness, come from, really all those aspects. And so for me, for so long, I wanted to be a nice person, and I am a very nice person, but nice is not the same thing as kind. Nice is really about like, how do people perceive me, not what am I doing for folks. You can be kind and also be nice, but just because you're being nice doesn't mean that you're being kind. And so in that way, that's why we talk about deliberate kindness being a thing. And I see that in my world all the time, even in like my legal practice work. Like I am a really great attorney. I am very effective. I am assertive, strong, etc. But like no one would ever say that I'm a jerk or anything like that. Like people are always often surprised to find out that I am one because of the way that I present myself. It's because I move with the three kindnesses in my space. I really feel, you catch more flies with honey. And the thing is, I also, like one of my biggest values is to keep people safe. You find that you can keep people safe and you can help them reach their potential if you are more aware of what they truly need. You don't want to just be nice. You want to, like, being kind sometimes is being able to tell people difficult things, but do it in a way that builds them up. Being kind is also being able to keep strong boundaries so that you keep other folks safe, but in a way that doesn't destroy others, etc. And I was never able to really do those things when all I was focused on was being nice. So when I shifted my lens to go, what is it truly to be kind? Then all of a sudden I'm affecting the world in a much more powerful way. I'm getting the things that I need out of it, but even more importantly, I'm helping give this impact and helping people overcome the things that they need to in a way that's actually lasting. And that was a shift in lens, like based upon the stuff that we've done, very much like you're talking about. And I found that it makes me a stronger, more powerful, and more meaningful presence because I'm kind, as opposed to just being nice.
No, definitely. That's awesome. So for the people that are listening to us that might say, hey, you know what, I need to work with you guys. How can they find you? Where can they connect with you guys?
So there are a few different places. One of the best places to go is to go to our website, 3kindnesses.com. And especially you can sign up for our mailing list there. We like when people do that because you get kind of controlled voice there. Another fantastic place to just see things happen, unfold, to really feel like you are getting the connection to it is particularly Angela's voice on LinkedIn. Is a really strong, powerful one. And you can just see the life take on there. We're on all social channels. At 3 kindnesses, the number 3 kindnesses on any of the social channels, and we interact with those and are always there kind of in that place. But the 2 best places are to go to our website. You can see all of our information, really understand our story, really understand that foundation, and also connect with us most directly there, as well as connecting with us on LinkedIn.
And you can also email us at hello@3kindnesses.com.
Yeah, we read emails. They don't just go spam. We read.
All right, no, that's awesome. So we've been talking a lot about kindness, and the one thing I see, and kind of talking to you guys and interacting with you guys, I see that there's definitely a lot of kindness within you guys. So where do you get that? How do you go about your day? Like, what do you have any? Tony Robbins refers to them as rituals. Do you guys have any rituals, any habits, anything you do on a day-to-day basis to really put you on this positive state of mind?
We often say that you can't put anything out in the world that isn't already within yourself. So kindness starts with self-care and self-kindness. So a lot of my rituals are around self-care, making sure that I'm taking care of myself and charging myself. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? So, and we love rituals. Rituals are a way to get through transitions. Transitions are hard. Rituals are such a powerful way to get through that. So, a lot of my rituals require downtime. And so for many years, I was a mother of small children. My children are grown now, but a ritual I always had was to get up a little bit earlier than the rest of the house because I needed that quiet time in the morning to recharge and set for my day. And a lot of what I need now, even now without kids in the house, I still need a lot of order and structure to my own environment. So I have rituals around that as well. And as you can see, I'm a bit of a book lover. So my library is a bit of a ritual for me as well.
Yeah. And then talk about self-care. Like, what are some specific things you do for yourself in terms of self-care? Because obviously there's different elements, right? So what do you do as self-care for yourself?
I think that for me, a really important bit of self-care is any kind of sensory experiences. So I think that we often, and I'm gonna defer to Odell here in a minute because he's very sensory as well. But I think we often get so overwhelmed by just getting through a day that we forget to reward ourselves with sensory experiences. So like just being able to sit down in the morning with a really good cup of coffee instead of just having to chug it in your travel mug on the way to work, right? So those sensory experiences, think about things that bring you delight, that bring you joy, even if it's just in very small ways. I find that those are forms of self-care that are really helpful to me.
Awesome. Adele?
Yeah, so it's great because we always balance them. So I am a single father of 2 small children. So there are definitely 2 small kids in the house who I'm so glad have stayed barricaded out of the door for now. Like we'll see. Knock on wood.
We didn't hear any screams, so
haven't heard any yet. Doesn't mean they haven't happened. I've got great noise canceling. We'll see. But yeah, so for me, similarly, the rituals are the way that we move through our day is really, really key. So I actually do very many of the things you say, getting up early, trying to get a bit of that breath in before, we like to call it, the hamster wheel begins to spin through the day. And so having some of those things be part of it. The other thing too is just really hearing the voices that are important to me. So the podcast that I listen to each day, or the way that, I'm the kind of person who is very sensory. So I clean up a little bit each day because I like to keep a clean house. Not that other people have to, it's just I realize what that means for me in my environment and those ritualistic pieces. Just like Angela's saying, those sensory things, and again, the permission to do it just for the fact that it's good for your senses. Sitting down and listening to music because I am a huge vinyl collector, or like making myself a really nice cocktail in the evening because man, oh man, I made it through another day of like peanut butter and jelly hands and things like that. So like just those aspects of things, but even being able to structure my day in such a way that it honors the pace that I need, that I have the right kind of balance of interacting with people versus interacting with myself is particularly key. And I'm very diligent about what that looks like each day. And just even going through the process of that ritual each day is something that I was never able to do in an environment where the way that the parameters were set for me so specifically in other places. So those things are particularly key. So much of my day is really, again, like it's parenting. It's a lot of like parenting and business. But at the same time, all of those things are really, really tied to rituals because it's how we get through them.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to having those rituals, those habits. It comes down to having that discipline, right? And being able to say, I gotta be able to discipline myself enough to be able to do all these different things because they are important for my day, right? And I know a lot of times, even myself back in the day, I didn't really have that, right? I didn't think I had the discipline, although I was pretty successful. I was also pretty lazy. I wasn't doing things that I should have been doing that I do now. And I think that, to me, at least, has made a big difference when you start creating these rituals, daily habits that, even though they might seem a bit silly, at least for me, they have helped out in tremendous ways and in many different aspects, right? So,
and I think that your wiring is so important to the rituals that you choose. Because I know there are people who need to get up in the morning early, but then they need to go immediately, do a workout or something. Great, nothing but respect for that. But my wiring would not probably feel that as kindly as other kinds of rituals I do. So just the idea, as you just said, that it takes us time to figure out our own operating manual, right? And then we can go, I now know that this will work or this won't work for me. But customizing your rituals for what you need it can be, as you just said, it's life-changing.
Right.
That's one of the things that that you're kind of touching on there, and it's another one of our life rules is really that structure is freeing, and it's meant to be broad. Like find the whatever structure you need in order to actually enjoy the freedom that you need. Some of us need a lot of structure in order to feel free. Some of us need very little of it. But if you build the right kind of structure into your life based on your values, based on your wiring, based on your personality, then you will find more freedom to engage with the things that are important to you rather than them always feeling like they're just out of grasp. And so I find that a lot of times we find those things as we get older, as we just like move through life more. But when we can engage that earlier, then we are being kind to ourselves in a way that gives us the ability to overcome the things that might stand in the way of what we need to do and actually engage with stuff that we really enjoy most.
Yeah, no, definitely. I have two more questions for you guys. The first one is, for the people that are listening to us or watching us, if they're going through any kind of challenge, whatever challenge that might be, will be one or multiple advices that you can give them so they can start overcoming that challenge.
I would say be kind to yourself. And part of self-kindness is recognizing that you are wired a certain way and that things that the world wants to tell you are failures are not failures, because you shouldn't expect something of yourself that you were not wired to be. And so I always go back to The Little Prince, the book, The Little Prince. And he always says, you can't expect, you can't expect a king to fly, and you can't expect, a sunset from a pigeon or whatever it is he says. But what he says is you have to ask of each what they are capable of doing. And I think that's a form of self-kindness, where we go, you know what, this is not for me, and I am not failing at this. This is simply something that I need to manage, because I have strengths. They just don't lie here. And I think, again, permission and kindness to yourself can go really, really far.
One thing that you mentioned, and I think it's somewhat important, because I know there might be people that probably don't understand that or don't see it that way. And I definitely agree with you that sometimes we are investing a lot of time, emotions, love, whatever that might be, into something or someone, and then that didn't flourish the way you wanted to flourish. And you talked about failure, right? So it became maybe a failure, or at least a perceived failure. Yet it's a little bit challenging for people to be able to come out of that and really overcome that over time, right? And really take that. So how do people that go through anything in that nature, how do you step out of that lesson, not necessarily a failure, that perceived failure, and see it as, you know what, you could overcome this, you could go to that next level, you could just take it for what it was and don't beat yourself out, even though you might be heartbroken or financially broken or emotionally broken, right? How do you step away from that and be able to do that? Because I think that's a very important topic, even going into what we're going through right now with all this pandemic.
Yeah.
I just wrote a bit of an article about this idea, because we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes in life. And so I think that if you begin to go through life with the idea that there aren't necessarily failures, there are only learning experiences, that can, again, shift your lens, to use your terminology. And I truly believe that the most powerful moments in life are actually those confluences where you're feeling grief, but there's also a sense of I can let go. And I think that understanding the power of that confluence in which you're going, this isn't going to feel great because there's so much sunk cost here. But on the other hand, with every single bit of grief or loss we feel, there's also the other side of that coin. In the same way that as we go through the world and we play to our strengths, if we overplay our strengths, they become a weakness. So that balance and learning to just abide by that, but also learning just to extend yourself grace. My goodness, if you don't ever try anything, then you will certainly never fail, but you will also never succeed. So giving yourself that grace to go out and fail and learn something is probably one of the kindest things that you can do to yourself.
I love it.
Odell, did I miss anything?
You certainly didn't miss anything. Never do. But never miss. But one thing I would also say is, as connected to what you're saying, and this is embedded in the kind of work that we do with individuals or organizations, is really helping uncover and clarify our values. because we really look at that and like deep values, like the true like hills you would die on. What are the most important values you have? Because those operate in your hand like a compass, helping you point towards north. And so I can think about the times when I have experienced failures, many as they have been. Nevertheless, when that direction has been tied to my values, when I've been able to say, yes, but I'm still moving in the direction of keeping people safe. Yes, I know that that didn't go how I wanted to. However, I still was making decisions based on wanting to have the kind of autonomy that's important, or wanting to be the kind of person that I want to. Like these various values that are particularly important to me, they really help when as you're talking about how it's difficult to go, oh man, I had that failure. How do I overcome that? Well, if I'm able to measure it against, yeah, but was it in service of my values? It doesn't change the heartbreak. It doesn't change that something's a failure, but it certainly helps me be able to answer that question about, was this, something that was meaningful, and will I survive this? Will I move forward? I go, yes, because I was doing that in service of keeping people safe, which is one of my highest values. Or I will be able to go, oof, no, I not only did that fail, but it was a failure of my values. So now I definitely need to make shifts, changes, etc. So that's a barometer by which we are able to measure once we know those things so clearly about ourselves. And it's deliberate work that you have to do. Like the world will tell you what you should value, but whether you should or not is a decision we have to make. And to be able to do that really helps make decisions and actions much clearer, much simpler, not easier. In fact, a lot of times they're just as hard, but they're much clearer, much simpler, because you are able to measure it against something that is, immovable and internal in yourself.
I definitely love that, and that gave a different perspective too. And I call it for myself. I say, what is my highest intention? And kind of going back to your values. What is that one thing? And I think that if whatever you're doing through your journey, whether it's business or personal, doesn't matter, and you're staying truthful to yourself, in my case, to your highest intention, even if that was a perceived failure, a lesson, and you're staying true to that. The only thing you have is say I can reflect. We talked earlier about surrendering, and I always tell people, don't surrender to give up, surrender to understand, surrender to see a different perspective, a different point of view. And so when you are staying truthful to yourself and you surrender to whatever's taken and dealing with what emerges, I believe that you can continue to move forward. And Les Brown says you got to keep marching forward, forward, right? And so I definitely love those points of view from that perspective. Anything else you guys want to say? I mean, I definitely have a great time conversating with you guys, and love what you guys are doing, and love the aspect of everything that you have going on. Anything else you guys want to share before I let you go?
I would always say, first of all, deep gratitude. We just really appreciate you having us, and we really appreciate being here, and we always really appreciate and enjoy an opportunity to talk about this. As you can tell, it's deeply important to us, like of the highest importance. And so we just never miss the moment of gratitude there. But also tell people, don't think yourself out of interacting with us. Sometimes folks go, I don't know if like what I'm thinking about is big enough or real enough. Like, we want to interact with people. We want them to be seen. We want them to hear what it is. So they're like, maybe I don't, influence people. I don't have a big enough team, or my company's small, or whatever. Like, stop, just come talk to us, because this world needs the kindness that we offer, and we really enjoy working with folks, and we really enjoy embedding it. And you just never know, just never really know. And so it's just a strong invitation to connect with people, because especially right now, I mean, as evidenced by what we're doing, our ability to connect with one another, we have all these ways to do so. Yet a lot of us are reeling from various versions of isolation, challenges, etc. And so if nothing else, we will be refreshment in your life. But also, we might be able to change your organization, shift your life in a direction the way that it has for us. And so we always want to hear from people. And we're just so grateful to be able to get a chance to talk about this in this way.
Awesome. Yeah.
Angela, Dr. Cox, anything I'm missing?
I always just have to go back to this present moment that is really difficult, just for so many reasons. We're living in a world of quite a bit of fear right now and uncertainty, and a lot of fractured pieces. And I think grace is the glue that's going to glue us all back together as we move through this, and kindness. And so I think kindness and understanding each other it's always been important, but I don't think I think now more than ever, we need the glue of grace and the kindness that's going to unite us and help us get through what's been some dark days for all of us. So be kind to yourselves and then extend that grace out to the world as well.
I love it. I love it. Well, it was definitely a great interview having you guys both at the podcast. So I really appreciate you guys being here today. And definitely thank you for what you do and the things you're doing to really impact the world positively.
Thank you so much, Cesar. It's been a delight
so
to be
much.
here with you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yep, definitely. So for the rest of you guys, do me a favor, please make sure that you guys connect with Angela and Odell. Go ahead and connect with them. And do me a favor, share this message because somebody needs to definitely hear this message. I'll definitely be seeing you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.